All right, and welcome. If you are watching this presentation, then it means that you are accessing our Adrenal Fatigue Warrior Toolkit. And I'm so excited that you're doing this. I have tried to put this together with no holds barred and trying to give you as much information as you can have on what you're suffering with. And really, you're suffering with overwhelm. You're suffering with being stressed out. You're suffering with not having energy. And it goes much deeper than that. You just are not living the life that you want to. You're on the sidelines and you're stuck, you're frustrated, and you a lot of the times don't know what to do. And here's what happens is you go to your primary care doctor and ultimately you tell them that you think you have an adrenal fatigue problem and they look at you like you're crazy. Or you don't even know about adrenal fatigue and you go to your primary care doctor and all the subspecialties and specialties, and you know the deal. You've been a lot of different places, you get a lot of different tests, and whether you know about adrenal fatigue or not, you talk to the doctors and you're told that there's nothing wrong. You're told that there's no such thing as adrenal fatigue, and you're told a treatment plan or a prognosis that you don't necessarily agree with. And that could be more tests or defaulting it to being this or that, which you don't quite agree with, doesn't capture exactly what you feel. Maybe you're told that you're depressed or you're anxious and you should go on some of these medications, and then you start second guessing yourself and then your family, and it just becomes a big mess. It's really, and that's why we created this Adrenal Fatigue Warrior Toolkit. My name is Dr. Joel Rosen, and I consider myself an adrenal fatigue recovery ninja. And I really created this program and this free toolkit because I wanted to give a lot of the answers to the questions that I get with people that always ask me, "Hey, what tests should we do? And what is adrenal fatigue, and why do doctors not agree with it? Or what are the best supplements that we can use?" And so what can I ask my doctor, and how can I educate myself about what's going on to ultimately fix the problem? And that's why I created this. So welcome aboard. This is called your Adrenal Fatigue Warrior Toolkit, and I really look forward to providing you with a lot of tools. And if you stay to the end, what we'll do is we'll give you a PDF of the take-home messages, so we can write down all the different tests that we recommend, and you can write down the different systems of the body that break down. You can write down what different supplements that we recommend. That's all going to be in a PDF, but you got to stay to the end for you to get that, and we'll include that as a couple of bonuses and goodies. So anyways, you're exhausted, you're overwhelmed, you're burnt out, and we really needed to put this warrior toolkit together. And in today's day and age, we're bombarded with just onslaughts of enemies, or time suckers, or stress suckers, or body invaders that just overwhelm us. And we need to be prepared, and we need to be trained, and we need to get the skill set to be able to get our life back. And you know what? I really believe that it's possible. Energy is possible. You can get energy. My goal, whenever I've created any programs, is about quadrupling a person's energy level and really, really fixing their metabolism and transforming their life. And it's 100% possible. So let's answer that age-old question. Is there even such a thing as adrenal fatigue? My doctors look at me like I'm crazy. And you know what? Quite frankly, we can call this a different type of characteristic, and a lot of things that are going wrong. We could call it a lot of different things. And I've stuck to the adrenal fatigue because ultimately you'll see that in the stress response, the common underlining mechanism in the body is the adrenal glands. Now, does it actually become fatigue? There's a lot of controversy on that, but we're going to get into exactly how I want you to speak to the doctors and how you will not alienate yourself by saying adrenal fatigue, but not understanding all the other things that are going wrong. And I hope that made sense. Is we use it as a term now of endearment, to be honest with you, because we recognize that the adrenals are overwhelmed and there's so many things that we have to educate ourselves on and what's going wrong, that we ultimately realize there's more than adrenal fatigue, and we endear this particular term. So anyways, this is what I want to teach you. I want to ultimately teach you, why am I exhausted? And more importantly, what can I do about it? And also, what kind of dialogue can you have to the doctors instead of just going up there and saying, hey, I think I have adrenal fatigue. You can say I have a hippocampus, or I have a hypothalamus pituitary axis dysfunction, I have adrenal insufficiency. But I want you to understand deeper than that. I want you to understand what's actually going on at the cellular level and why you're not getting better. So, and most importantly, we want to present solutions for you, so that this whole society, this adrenal fatigue society, this whole website that you're part of, we're going to have so many different tools for you. We're going to have outcomes and ways to measure, and different educational modules, and really, because the solutions are not just straightforward. As you know, you are many a time the person who is eating healthy, is taking all the supplements, is trying to de-stress, and is just not moving the needle. And so that's why I've created this entire Adrenal Fatigue Society, is to give you the tools to end your adrenal fatigue nightmare, or end your energy nightmare, and really getting back into the game of life. And we can kind of identify with this lady here. She seems like she's enjoying her coffee on a cold day, but oh my gosh, if we don't have that coffee and we don't have that little extra caffeine and that little extra burst of energy, we're depleted and we don't feel motivated. We don't want to go out. We don't want to get back into our lives, and we do, but we don't know how to get there. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about what's actually happening. We have that stress response. And really, at the end of the day, what happens is stress depletes your metabolic reserves. That's really what it's doing. It's really impacting your body's ability to make energy. And that's what metabolism is. It's making energy. So it's impacting your ability to make energy. And I'm also going to teach you understanding hormone testing, why they do certain tests and what other tests could be very helpful. I also want to teach you how we can address some of these key reversible stressors. And then we're going to talk about nutrients and support protocols. On this video is going to be talking about all that stuff, but we are going to be including PDFs as a bonus for the nutrition and support protocols. So what is stress, and how does it impact us? So I want you to buckle up, get ready, turn out all your extra distractions, and that's part of the reason why you're in this overwhelmed feeling, is you're not a computer that can have 15 different windows open. So put your phone away, get into a nice comfortable spot, buckle up, get ready to blast off, and let's get your life back. So let's talk about the general response to stress. Stress can be a disruption to the biological system in a predictable way. And that's what it is. It really causes a disruption in your body. And the father of stress, Hans Selye, was laughed at a long time ago. And he was born in the early 1900s by his medical companions and his peers. They all thought he was crazy. That how can you say that there's this predictable response to different stressors? And that's what he was really saying. And he said, ultimately, the more stress that you have, the more it leads to chronic disease. And it doesn't seem like that big of a leap. It really doesn't. But now that all this time and energy and education has gone through and gone by since his day, we've learned actually what happens at the cellular level. And so, like we said, it's a non-specific strain on the body, and it's caused by irregularities in the normal body functions. It can either be perceived or it's real. And it's either biological or it's physical, it's emotional, it's chemical. All of those things are going to impact your body in an adverse way. The bottom line, without getting too scientific-y, it is really about ensuring survival. Our body is meant to ensure survival. And when it loses its ability, or not only that, it's just constantly having to make checks and balances to ensure its survival, its internal chemical survival, its internal oxygen survival and energy survival. When it does that, it's going to ultimately bend and break if it does it too much. Talking about the first inceptor of stress, we had Walter Cannon, and he talked about the fight or flight. And he talked basically, hey, in the fight or flight, your brain gets our stimuli. We get something happens. And then what happens is your brain interprets that signal. And then what happens as a result? Your body gets aroused and deals with it, and then it returns to normal. And that's very simplistic thinking, and there's beauty in simplicity, but it doesn't capture what we know today. Then Hans Selye came along and he said, hey, there's an alarm stage, there is a resistance stage where we adapt, and then we can recover, but then there's also those that don't recover and they just become exhausted. And really what he was saying is that the body can no longer meet the demands. It just becomes fatigued, and as a result it depresses your immune system and you get a higher rate of injury. So he really took the torch and ran with it, but now we got to continue moving forward. And what's the common denominator is our body has to adapt to stress. We just have to be able to do that. We have to be able to increase our body temperature, decrease our body temperature, increase our blood pressure, decrease it, increase our strength, decrease our strength, balance our immune system, get it up, get it down. I mean, our body is always having to adapt to stress. And our internal environment is constantly changing. And unfortunately, it's changing for the worst in terms of, as you know, the more chemicals we have in the environment, and pesticides and sprays and GMOs and synthetics and chemical disruptors, and hate to look like the sky's falling, but our body really has to adapt at a higher rate than it's ever had to adapt before. And really the body's very, very efficient at doing it. It strives to have the greatest impact or the greatest effectiveness at the lower or the lowest dose to be able to achieve it. Very, very efficient. So we have these two terms called homeostasis versus allostasis. So homeostasis is really about your body's regulation of its internal environment. That's the concept, is, hey, in order to maintain internal regulation of the body's internal environment, that's what we call homeostasis. But allostasis is actually what's happening to do that. How is your body increasing its blood pressure, decreasing its blood pressure, releasing hormones and breaking down hormones and all of that stuff? How is it doing that? And that's called allostasis. So allostasis maintains homeostasis. And the primary goal is to maintain a stable environment in the body with all the stressors. That's the goal. And for some time, we seem to be able to handle it, but over time, we lose our ability to handle it. And guess what? What's really interesting about this is these allostatic mediators, so the things that maintain that internal environment, are hormones, catecholamines. Those are adrenaline, things that are made by your adrenal medulla, the inner part of the adrenals. And then the cytokines are the immune cells. And these are all chemical messengers that have to be able to communicate to each other to maintain that allostatic pressure. But what's really cool about that is the adrenal glands are involved in every one of those phases. And hence we talk about adrenal fatigue. So that's why I like the term adrenal fatigue, but I need to educate you and give you more tools so that when you do see your own provider, you understand at a much deeper level how much more than the adrenals are involved. We understand glucose is involved. I mean, everything that we're going to be teaching you here. But these mediators, these allostatic mediators, are immune cells, hormones, adrenaline, and that's what's really cool about the adrenals. So really, we need to establish metabolic flexibility. We need to be able to adapt to our fullest. The more adaptable you are, the more flexible you are, the more resilient you are, the more energy you have. And it's really about getting you healthy, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's about getting you healthy. So what our goal is to just become as efficient as possible, handle the information in the environment as possible, as best as possible, to be as resilient and as efficient as you can. And so what happens if you lose adaptability? It's a pretty scary, concern, because we basically crash and burn, and you know how that feels like. And ultimately, you have this thing called allostatic overload. You're creating wear and tear on your body till eventually the proverbial straw that breaks the camel's back, and now you have breakdown and overwhelm. So allostatic changes, what happens is your blood pressure can go higher or lower, your temperature, your strength, your heart rate, increased immunity, decreased immunity. And remember, it can be good or it can be bad. So you can do proactive things to get healthy and decrease your blood pressure and decrease your heart rate and increase your immunity, or you can do things that aren't doing that. So there's two ways you can go on it, and there's really a happy medium. So all of this at the end of the day, what impacts allostasis and your ability to maintain your allostatic pressure is stress. I mean, that's really what we're talking about. So let's talk about the adrenals, because this is where I can teach you more and more on this page, and we'll have a lot of resources to this, and make sure you get a membership to our Adrenal Fatigue Society site. And ultimately, we want to talk about the hypothalamus and the pituitaries and the adrenals. So instead of going to the doctor and say, hey, I think I have adrenal fatigue, realize that your hypothalamus and your pituitary and your adrenal, and that axis is what that's called, becomes somewhat dysfunctional. And also there's other things. So I want to teach you that. So really, why do the doctors say there's no such thing as it, or how do they test it? That's what I wanted to talk to you about first. So it depends on the real hormone model. It depends on the hormone model of the doctor that you go and see. Conventional medicine, typically they think of synthetic hormones, birth control pills like Premarin or Provera, and these, or levothyroxine. That was good when, the times of the Colosseum were built. But now that we've taught ourselves functional endocrinology and functional medicine, we realize it may not be the best way to go. And we'll talk about typically the tests they do. They'll do a blood test, and they'll look at your blood values, and if they're really, really low, well, we'll talk about that. And that's really the bioidentical hormone model. Really is it's a symptom-based model. They really don't look at your labs to get some useful information, except for the fact if they're really low, then they'll just give you some bioidentical hormones to raise them. Or as you get older, and they have the anti-aging model where, hey, you're not at the top of the peak, so let's just maintain your useful peaks. And guess what? This stuff works well. It works in the short term for a lot of people, but as you'll see with what's going wrong with your entire body just beyond adrenal fatigue and all the stressors that it's impacting at the biochemical level and the cellular level, you'll find that maintaining your useful peaks or getting out of deficiency isn't good enough for the long term. And that's really what I want to teach you. So really what we like to teach is the functional endocrinology based model. That's where we want to support your body's ability to make hormones. We want to reestablish proper feedback loops. And I'll create a PDF of this for you guys so you can get this. And you just got to make sure you click at the end here for your goodies. Support the receptor site response. Identify underlying causes of hormone imbalance, and consider endocrine disruptors. So let's talk about clinical endocrinology, and from the pituitary right down to the receptor. So like we talked about, we want to support the hormones, we want to reestablish the feedback loops, make sure the liver is working well, make sure that the hormones can bind to the receptors, make sure that we have no other reasons for imbalances, and make sure that we are addressing chemicals. So really what happens is you have the hypothalamus releases a hormone, it's called a releasing hormone, and that goes to the pituitary. Then the pituitary releases a hormone that stimulates hormone production, and that goes to the gland. And basically when that gland makes the hormone, it's bound to a protein. And then what happens, you can see it's quite complicated. That hormone has to be a free hormone before it can bind to the receptor. And then that bound part of the protein part has to be cleared out of the body. But endocrine disruptors can really increase or decrease that from happening. And ultimately that free hormone has to have an impact on the cell for it to work. And then you could see all these other things, which I'm not going to get into, but I just want you to get the concept that, hey, if your hormone metabolite is not clearing out of the liver and your gut health isn't doing a good job at converting active hormones or inactive hormones to active hormones, you have chemical disruptors, and it goes more than just your pituitary telling your hormone and you getting TSH or synthetic hormones to help it out. These are the 10 questions that I want you to look at. Is there a HPA axis problem? So I'll print this out and I'll make this a PDF for you guys. Is there too much circulating hormones that impact the pituitary feedback? Are you taking too much hormones? Is the endocrine gland able to make the hormone? Are there an upregulation of hormones that are converting and that's causing, or is there abnormal conversions? Are there problems with proteins with the bound to the free ratios? Is the liver not doing a good job? Is the gut microbiome not doing a good job? Can you get it out of your body? Are the ones that aren't clearing from the body, are they now junking up your receptors and creating more problems? And also, are there endocrine disruptors? So that's really, really important. I want you to, when I print that out for you guys, I want you to have access to that. And then here we also have methods for hormone testing. So what we do is we do blood, urine, and saliva. I mean, I don't like to guess. And so, however, each one has their benefit and their drawback. Most doctors are just going to do blood, and they're going to say, hey, it's your levels are fine. You don't have any problems. And you know what? What's good about the blood is it measures your total amounts, and it can measure the free fractions. It can measure your pituitary hormones. Insurance pays for it. Doctors understand it, and you're seeing how much hormone is your body actually making. The bad part about it is it's invasive. You got to get needles. The lab ranges are very broad. So unless you're sicker than that average sick person, you're told that there's nothing wrong. Or what if your circadian rhythms are messed up at different times of the day and you're just taking one draw? You're not going to see that. It's a big problem. Then we look at your saliva samples, and saliva samples are great because they're non-invasive. It's easy to do. You can do it throughout the whole day. It measures your circadian rhythm. It measures your HPA axis and looks at hippocampus integrity, and that's basically how is your hormones being released, and is that being impacted by cortisol, and is there a blood sugar imbalance? Most doctors know about it now. Insurances pay for it, but it's very limited. And why is it limited? Because it only looks at the free fraction of the hormone, which really only represents 1 to 2% of the total amount. It doesn't look at any of the proteins that are bound to the hormones, and it's very limited in terms of all of the different hormones that it measures. It doesn't measure very much. And I'm a real big fan of the urine testing. Its applications are great because you can look at metabolized, how much is being produced, what are all the different hormones, are you going down a different pathway? Is phase 1 and phase 2 slow? In terms of detoxification, it looks at the genetic component with COMT and MTHFR and upstream mechanics. It looks at key enzymes that are involved with the stress response, like 11 beta HSD or 5 alpha. These are all fancy ways of looking at your hormone pathway and seeing where it's breaking down. But here's the thing. I don't think one of these ways, the urine, the blood, or the saliva, is best by itself. I think it's best done in conjunction, and that's what I really recommend. The limitations of the urine test is it reflects, a lot of doctors say, hey, because it's looking at your urine, it measures what's already been cleared by your liver and kidney, and if your liver and kidney is not working well, then we may get some false readings. And I find that to be inaccurate. The people say that it doesn't have good studies that show it relates to the circadian rhythm. I think that's inaccurate too, because I think you will find that over time, as this technology gets more and more understood, that it does relate, because I've done enough of these to see it relates to your circadian rhythm. People also say it doesn't assess your pituitary gland feedback if it's not looking at your circadian rhythm, and again, I would disagree with that. So you can see I'm a big fan of it, but I'm a big fan of all three of them. So really, I want this to change your dialogue with your doctor. I want you to explain to the doctor that you realize that stress has overbalanced your allostatic compensation, or your ability to maintain your internal environment. And as a result, your HPA axis isn't working well, your hormones are potentially not getting inside the cell actively, they're not being cleared effectively, your liver may be impacting that, you may have a microbiome disruption which is impacting your blood sugar. I want you to speak the language and see, hey, what can we do to identify what we can do about this? So the other thing I want you to know is these are things that you can pretty much determine based on subjective how you feel that you got some of these going on. Like, for example, you're not staying asleep, you crave salts, you're a slow starter in the morning, you have afternoon fatigue, you have problems when you stand up, you have weak nails, you have headache upon exertion, even you can't fall asleep, you perspire easy, you're under high amounts of stress, you have weight gain under stress, you wake up tired. And then an abnormal circadian rhythm is a bunch of those: inability to fall asleep or stay asleep, waking up with little energy, not feeling rested and recharged, dropping of the energy between 4 and 7 with unexplained blood sugar problems, inflammation problems and pain and headaches, and And those are the things. So the other thing I want to talk to you about is we're going to talk about the best supplements, because really there's four priorities when we're fixing the adrenal glands and we're fixing the mitochondrial function and we're fixing everything that we're saying is breaking down. Supporting your blood sugar, normalizing your mucosal barrier or your GI lining, making sure you have good liver function, and making sure you have good essential fatty acids. So supporting blood sugar is all about reducing inflammation, preventing insulin surges, supporting your adrenal mechanics. I have a lot of tools in this. We're already going pretty long on this PowerPoint, but I have a lot of other tools that you'll be able to utilize in order to get some answers for that. We also want to normalize your mucosal lining. That means increasing tolerance, utilizing your vitamins and minerals and your flavonoids and your antioxidants, and to be able to get into the cell and have a metabolic effect. And we also want to make sure the liver is doing a good job. We also want to make sure, and speaking of the liver doing a good job, phase 1 and phase 2 are working well, that you're clearing out your hormones, you're clearing out your receptors, and you're supporting proper hormone metabolites, meaning your liver is converting from one form to the next. And then we also want to just basically rebalance your essential fatty acids. That means repairing your cell membranes. That's a genetic component thing. Optimizing your receptor activity, reducing inflammation, and optimizing your HPA feedback. So, hey, listen, this was the beginning of the toolkit. There's going to be tools all over the place for you in this Adrenal Fatigue Society webpage. I'm really excited you're here. I'll make sure we get the PDFs for the different tests, to the 10 different priorities to look at, and of course the supplements. So it's my pleasure that you're on my site. Make sure that you reach out to me and ask me whatever questions you have, and I look forward to ending your adrenal fatigue nightmare. Thank you so much.